Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Kat.
This is Carl.
And this is Tom.
And welcome back. It's Romulans Bearing Gifts, Engineering Hall Edition, Episode 22.
Is it really engineering? You got the whole sausage section just chilling here. Is it?
Hey, you know, the ship is combined, you know, more often than not. So
at this point in time, it is.
Yes,
members of the crew are always free to move around the cabin, you know, as they decide, as they choose. But
the tray tables.
You know, last time we were talking about a certain Enterprise episode. And,
oh my god!
I'm just saying, like,
don't taint this episode.
I'm not. But of the episodes we've covered in the previous 21 episodes of this show, that episode, Strange New World. It's not even in my bottom 2 of stories that we've covered so far.
Why are we talking about that?
We're
on to a next.
Just saying. Well, you know, we got to fill time as I look to see if there's any new Star Trek news or not.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. Let's just talk about the episode.
Well, I wonder who chose this episode.
This was me.
Yes, Tom is a hero.
So, Tom, what was your choice many weeks ago?
Many weeks ago, DS9 4.2, The Visitor.
A freak accident freezes Cisco in time.
No! Don't leave me!
Now his son begins a lifelong obsession.
You're older than I am.
To save his father.
We're trying to rescue you. Let go, Jake.
But to bring him back to reality...
They're being pulled into subspace.
...could take Jake his entire life.
Jake, what's happened to you?
On an all-new episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Well, it was a dark and stormy night is kind of how it starts out. Jake, at this point, is old, and we see him injecting himself with something. We don't know what it is. We see that he has lived his life as a semi-famous writer, but that he stopped when he was very young. During this storm at the beginning of the show, he gets a knock at the door, and a writing student shows up who wants to talk about writing with him, and she is an aspiring writer, and she wants to know why he stopped writing. And Jake winds up telling her the story of his life, and it turns out that his father disappeared at 18 in an accident, and what we're looking at is an alternative timeline, and as you know, Star Trek characters can't stub their toe without creating an alternative timeline, so here we are. He and his father, when he was 18, were going to witness the wormhole going through a subspace inversion, and because, once again, as usual, they can't just leave anomalies alone.
You got to poke an anomaly. You got to poke an anomaly on Star Trek.
Poke it right in the eye. So, they fly out and try to get as close to it as they can. Jake isn't that interested, but his dad gets him out there wants him to come out and take a look. Says, stop being a little wuss and come out and let's go screw with this anomaly. Cisco, while the anomaly is occurring, Cisco gets hit with a discharge and winds up in subspace. But everyone thinks he's dead. Subspace, we find out, is kind of misty. Looks like San Francisco. I don't know why. It's one of the gayer dimensions, I guess.
Oh my god!
No! Don't you know what they say? It's because of all the rice cookers. That's where the.
What is happening?
No, I lived in the Bay Area once, and that's what everybody says. It's all It's the steam from all the rice cookers.
All I know is subspace has a
racism or something.
I love rice. What do you have against rice? What do you have against rice?
Eric is half Asian, just for anybody.
Why do you have this? Like,
I just want to make sure people's not thinking we're
awful people. Okay, it was smoky like a Bon Jovi video. Okay,
nice, much better.
Fine.
All right. Jake, at this point, his father has disappeared. He's grieving. He winds up living with Dax, who's kind of taking care of him, which is a great way to milk your situation, by the way. Yeah. I'd kill my dad to live with Dax, too.
That'd be sweet. Sweet deal.
But Cisco appears to Jake here and there for a few minutes at a time. And at first, no one believes that this is happening. No one believes Jake that this is happening.
He's
but
just
Jake,
grieving. They just think he's grieving.
Yeah, they think he's grieving. But Jake seems to know that it is more than a hallucination. Maybe because his father keeps giving him boring lectures every time he appears about how to live his life. Jake, the Bolin is the best kind of knot. Learn the Bolin. See you in 20 years. But eventually the crew gets to see him too. Cisco shows up and the crew actually witnesses it, and they try to pull him out of subspace, but they can't do it, and it just serves to tear Jake apart even more emotionally. Then the Klingons take over the station. Jake and Nog go to Earth to kind of live out their lives there, and Jake becomes a writer, but he's still grieving so much that he quits and devotes himself to physics, and in an attempt to hopefully learn enough to save his father. And what he learns over the course of his life, very slowly, is that it turns out that Cisco and Jake are connected by a sort of a rubber band of sorts, because the universe follows the laws of office supplies or something. And Jake could have skipped the physics degree and gotten a job at Staples. But in order to send his father back to the accident, Jake has to kill himself when his father appears, because at that point the rubber band is taut, apparently, and by breaking the bond it will slingshot his father back to the time of the accident, where his father can make a better decision and change the time.
Yes, duck left.
Yeah, that's what she. Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. And then we return to Jake as an old man talking to this young lady, and he tells her to enjoy her life and live life to the fullest, and basically to don't squander your time. And then he destroys her whole timeline.
Yeah.
So and that's the end. And it was good. Why did I choose this? Eric wants to know.
Because he wanted to make Kat happy.
Because I wanted to make Kat happy.
Yeah.
Is that the real answer, or are you just saying that?
So, no, that was...
Well, because I thought maybe you felt like what happened to me, you chose Way of the Warrior, I believe, Tom. And what happened to me after I watched Way of the Warrior, it kept playing, and it rolled into this episode. And I remember when we discussed this on the podcast, I said, oh, it made me want to watch the next episode.
Kat can't be happy.
Oh, yeah. No, I had other reasons, and I don't think it coming next really had anything to do with it. It is partly it was I knew it was a good one that most people liked, but I also didn't remember the ending, but I did remember that it basically went for the emotional jugular. It had a lot of really tender moments in it. There were a lot of good father-son moments, and they really went for it. I like the way the crew becomes Jake's family, and they kind of come together to take care of him. And I like that Jake finally gets to act in this.
Oh, yeah.
So we get to see him with a little more depth, and we get to see him act. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Anyone?
So what did you think about it, though?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I tend to like Star Treks that get sappy.
That's it.
I like the one where Data had a daughter and she died, and there's some reason for some reason,
Spoiler.
when
That's
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tom has a penchant for losing offspring and parents and things of that.
Yeah, I guess that's coming out. isn't it?
Infanticide, patricide. Yeah, I get it. Makes sense.
But I like it, and I like that. One of the things that I know everybody brings up here and there about suspending disbelief. One of the things I like about this particular episode is that they had this crazy setup that is kind of unbelievable, and it's a device to explore how the characters are going to react in this situation. But once they've set it up, after the situation is established, all the reactions feel real, and there's no further craziness. You just get to see how these people that you like so much react to the situation. And I like that. I like that they jump right back into the real world. For me, that's a big deal. It really helps me buy in. So,
Yeah.
The fact that they reset it, you're saying, is what helps you buy in. Is the fact that they reset it after they're finished? Is that what...
the fact that they quickly move through the setup. Any unbelievable. Often in these shows, there's a setup that's a little bit unbelievable, or a little that is just a device to get things going.
like going to a planet and not vetting it first and just letting your dog run loose and the whole crew run loose.
Sure. Or you've
Things
got
like that.
Yeah, or you've got some crazy technical stuff going on. So Data finds a way to make a daughter, and it's not really about the technology that goes into that. It's about the people and how they respond to all that. And a lot of time in a lot of sci-fi, you find them doing unbelievable things to get themselves in a situation, and then instead of coming back and exploring how everybody reacts to it, they keep doing unbelievable stuff. Like Under the Dome comes to mind. Okay, that's a good example. Under the Dome would have been okay if they had made a dome and then, okay, that's interesting. What would happen? How would everybody feel? And you start thinking, how would me and my friends react? Okay, but then when it just continually devolves and something crazy is happening, and on every single moment, you can no longer buy in. You've overstayed your welcome. You've pushed things too far. So. They didn't do that in this episode. They had something that was obviously a silly device to get you into this situation that was a difficult situation between a father and a son, and a father who had to watch his son grow up all at once. But they didn't make things crazy all the way through. They focused on the people and the emotions and their reactions. And so that's particularly what I liked about this episode.
I think that's crazy. I mean, in a science fiction story, using science fiction to tell a story that you couldn't tell just anywhere else. I mean, like as opposed to say, maybe like going into a cave and just sitting in a cave for a while.
Wait a second.
I mean, that could be a good science fiction story, totally. But
no. I think this is
science fiction to tell a science fiction story.
No, wait, Carl.
It's a radical idea.
I think this is a bad time to pull out that argument.
You the one that started with Enterprise, buddy.
I'm just saying. I think you're misappropriating that argument. No, the reason why because but you brought that up. I think you're misappropriating. I think that's a poor usage of that example because
it is really not.
Because this episode
really not.
This episode doesn't really feel like actual science fiction to me. That part that
it's done well. And
no.
I mean that anytime that a good science fiction story is told well, that it touches on an emotional touchstone, then people try to qualify. Oh, well, that's not really science fiction. Then
no. It is a good story. But what I'm saying is, to me, this is a supernatural story that is in sci-fi clothing, and I don't have any problem with that. I'm just saying I don't think of it as an actual sci-fi story, though. At least the way it's presented in this episode.
I will accept fantasy and science fiction, but all I'm saying is if you can tell a story on a camping trip that is not that does not involve any sort of metaphysical or science fiction components, then you need to put that back in the fairy tale. And this is a good example of and yes, I'll even give you, it does feel a little bit more fantasy, but given it's Star Trek, we got this is science fiction that we're doing here, that they do use the device as Tom described of the whatever the magical technology is that thrusts them in the situation. But the situation, the scenario, the alternate timelines, being able to see a father being static and seeing his son grow up in these snapshots. All of those are very interesting perspectives and ways of thinking about telling a story. That's really, really innovative. And Tom, it is deadpan way, sort of describe the story in a very dry kind of way. But man, there were feels, there was emotions all through this episode that resonate with people who might have lost a parent, or people who are separated from their parents for a long time, for people who have lived an unfulfilling life. I mean, there are just so many of these emotional touchstones all woven into this episode that it was really, really powerful. It was really powerful. And it was the inner light of DS9.
It was.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
So it was great. But I got more to say, but I think we should hand this to Kat, because I think she might have something to say about this.
Really? Okay, so I would have to say that The Visitor is one of my all-time favorite Deep Space Nine episodes, and there's just so many things that I know as a person I saw in this episode that other people may not see, for why it touched me so much. Well, no, we're not talking about touching, but first, Tony Todd. That guy is a phenomenal actor. I think he's extremely underrated. He's not in enough stuff. The things that he is in, he is always just amazing.
Always good to see him.
He what wasn't he the Fallen in Transformers?
Was he?
No, wait, no, wait.
Or was he?
No, because they had
was he?
That was Leonard Nimoy.
He was one of the Transformer voices, and
I'm sure he was though.
Listening. He was one of them. I can't remember, but Tony Todd, and he's done several voice things. He's been Candyman. He's done a lot of horror, anything. But to me, those don't really showcase his talent as a actor like The Visitor does. Now, some people might not think Tony Todd is the most handsome actor. However, to me, I disagree, and I think he's just well, that's not what I think his beauty comes from within, and I think also it has something to do with his training, his voice, the way he projects himself. I'm sorry, and I think on something about this episode, it was like the battle of the voices. We know that Benjamin Sisko has a voice on him. We know that Tony Todd has a voice on him. So they just were, to me, speaking in a way, everything was soft-spoken. Everything was very tender, very, I'm not going to even say like Barry White sexy. It was just, you when you're having a conversation with somebody and it's coming from somewhere good. So also I liked about another thing I liked about this episode was seeing men be tender to each other, where we don't usually see like a toxic masculinity where guys, always have to be tough or everything like that. And to me, this really shows how men can really be sensitive, and not in a, let's make fun of them sort of way, but it shows a different side of masculinity that I just really love to see. Like you can only see with your family or your brothers or your boyfriend or something like that. And it just made me feel the love. Tony Todd and how he looked at Cisco as his dad, as an older person. Tony Todd, how he looked at his wife, and how he looked really, truly, deeply in love with her. That's what I'm saying about this actor. He really he gave so much to this role. And as an old guy, he was just tender and normal. And another thing about this, and I'm sure it's my perspective, but maybe if somebody can kind of look at it through my eyes, but to me, I felt that any person of any race could have been dropped into this episode and acted it. But what we see is a lot of tenderness and genuine feelings between a lot of Black males in a way that we do not usually see on TV in a science fiction show. And to me, that I usually don't really talk about race in science fiction, mainly because I think it's more about the characters and the technology, not your skin color. But to me, it was just really something beautiful to see, because, a lot of stereotypes don't let you see this side of somebody with this skin color. And I just thought, and it wasn't that they were Black. It was just, they were just people that happen to be Black and, look like me or whatever, which makes a difference to me. Also, it dealt with grief and what your mind goes through with grief. So on one level, Jake Sisko had the normal response of, when you lose somebody, you can kind of go a little bit mad. You might think you hear their voice. You may think you see them, in the form of a ghost or something like that, because you're under a lot of emotional distress, and your brain may play tricks on you. So we got to see that version of grief, and then they added the science fiction element where it was like a temporal rubber band, blah blah blah. So this episode had so many things going on that just made it so beautiful. It was well written. I didn't think the device, as Carl describes them, it wasn't over the top, and it had a lot going on. And another reason why Tony Todd is so awesome is that we tweeted him about this episode and how much we liked it, and he liked our tweet and retweeted us. And so we don't get that with Enterprise actors, just letting you know. But
MG.
But no, there's a lot going on that really was very special to me about this episode. And I'm not going to lie, I cried. And I've seen this episode so many times, and it still can get right under my skin and reach that part of me that is vulnerable and wants to see the very foundation of human behavior and love and things like that. So, yeah. The Visitor.
Wow.
All true. All true.
That's true. That's true. So, Eric, what'd you think?
Sorry, you have to go after me.
Oh, dear.
Spray the bathroom.
Oh, dear. Oh, I had some thoughts composed, but I feel a little discombobulated right now. Let me see. Oh, by the way, for the record, Kat was right. Tony Todd did voice the Fallen in that 2009.
I'm just going to take that as a clip. Kat is right, and put it as my ringtone for you every time. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way she described her feelings about Tony Todd and how, it's not so much him on the outside, but it's like his internal acting abilities that lends his, that leads to his characterizations and his performance. That's exactly how I feel about Jerry Ryan, by the way. Just want to add a 7 of 9 fame.
I really hate you.
Well, I'm just saying. I don't know what other people see when they see her on screen, but I'm about the insides when it comes to Jerry Ryan. But
I can't believe he's mocking me.
I'm not mocking. What? What?
It's hard to tell with Eric sometimes.
Can't I
It
like
really
Jerry
is.
Ryan?
I don't know if he's telling the truth or if he's just joking right now. So I
No,
don't
but this
know.
episode, okay. Obviously, I remember it. I already said when I finished watching Way of the Warrior, I wanted to just go ahead and jump right into this one. I would have rather... Well, I mean, I like Way of the Warrior too, but I would have rather watched this one than Way of the Warrior if I had my choice. But that said, I started watching it again, and it was a bit interesting. I hadn't revisited it anytime recently. It definitely comes off it's very wanky, but there's nothing wrong with wanking. I'm just saying it's a very fan wanky episode. What?
Okay.
What? It is. It absolutely is. Like for instance, not exactly in the same way, but Trials and Tribulations is an ultimate wank episode. This doesn't go as far as that. Again, that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it falls into that category because it is fun. I remember one of my favorite aspects of it originally, and it's still one of the selling points now, is kind of playing out this alternate future and seeing how things turn out, not just with Jake but with the rest of the DS9 characters as well. I actually think, I'm guessing I thought about this back then, and I thought about it again now, which is, it's kind of fun that just last week, Way of the Warrior set up this whole new direction and plot line for the series, DS9, with the whole Klingon situation, the Cardassians and all that. And it's kind of fun, right in the very next week, to just play out one scenario of this is how things could turn out with that whole Klingon situation. But, of course, it's an alternate timeline, so we can just kind of have fun with this and get back to seeing what really happens with Benjamin Sisko in the picture. I know this doesn't sound... I know it sounds like I'm bearing the lead on this episode, but these were the things that I found interesting back then and again now. So that stuff's kind of fun. It's kind of fun when they go back to Return to the Wormhole in the future timeline. I mean, they even have the throwback communicators from, I think, All Good Things when they went into their alternate future timeline. I know this is not important, but they're like continuing the continuity of the communicator pins. I know, not that exciting. Now that said, as I was rewatching it, I pretty much remembered the story. You know, it came back to me pretty well. I mean, how the resolution plays out and everything. And that made a lot of those parts not as exciting for me now, rewatching it. Meaning, now in retrospect, I had the feeling of, yeah, of course that's going to happen. Of course, things are going well with his spouse now, older Jake. And of course, it's not going to go well when, you know, he has this, when he's, you know, focused on this pursuit of rescuing his father, yada yada. So that stuff made me feel not that engaged, but that's no fault of the episode. That's just me. And I was surprised when we get to the end, the part that Kat said moved her at the end. I was actually surprised that I was somewhat moved still watching it now, because even though I knew what was going to happen, and I wasn't really feeling it before then, they did get that reaction out of me again still in 2016. That's good, obviously. But I don't know. It's good. I don't know what else to say. But I don't know. I have other thoughts, but they're also not dazzling or nothing amazing. The other insights and things I took away from it. I don't know. I feel like a wet blanket, even though I think this is a good episode.
Okay, all right. Well, one of the things I liked about one of the main things I liked about the episode is that it feels like about 4 or 5 stories in one. I mean, when you start to peel back the levels of what's going on, I mean, it is initially the story of Jake losing his father. And they actually, we actually see the funeral. We see his personal experience of that. That's one traditional story that's embedded in there. Then there is the story of him trying to sort of move on and go beyond that loss with his life and his career. So we get to see a snippet of Jake's life, Jake's alternate timeline life. So just to see him finally becoming the writer that we knew that he could be, to see what his little life with with being married and settling down someplace, that is another. It was an interesting and it felt natural as a storyline for Jake. Nothing about it seemed odd. It really did feel like the natural progression of what his life could be. Even though, as viewers, we know the loss of his father or his father missing seemed strange, that little world from his home, from where he was living, from what his career was, felt like a natural little story about Jake. Then, of course, there's the sci-fi band in it where the whole crew's coming together to try to figure out what happened with his dad, him popping in and disappearing, and the technobabble surrounding, trying to catch him, trying to stop what was going on, and the possession of Jake at that point. Again, this is these layers of story. I'm not going to say they were broad enough to have been their own episode, but they really were coherent and consistent, and they made sense. They really were strong elements by themselves. And then, of course, there is senior Jake looking back on his life with the wisdom of a life that he had lived, that he was sharing with the young author that was coming in, which is sort of the story that you get from a wizened old person who looks back and gives you advice about your life and lets you know how valuable time is. And even that story was fortified by the little popping in of Benjamin Sisko saying basically the same thing, telling him, don't make these mistakes, don't obsess about these things, life is more important than that, let those things go. All of these different stories were woven together in a context that was powerful, that was emotional, that was smart, that wasn't too sappy. It wasn't too sappy. It really could have gone off the rails. But given these were characters that we cared about, given that they progressed in a way that was fast and not maudlin, like dwelling or harping on any one piece of this, which could have gotten long. All of the stuff woven so well together, and those elements that Kat brought up also. Honestly, when you are a person of color and you're watching science fiction, you do feel a certain underrepresentation. We embrace the stories independent of race and independent of culture and class and color and all that stuff. But we just enjoy, as a black person, just enjoy good stories and good science fiction. But to actually see a story that was respectfully told with people of color, and in particular, a father and son, that DS9 has brought that powerful timeline, that powerful storyline, in a way that you just don't see, let alone science fiction, just across the board. If you can think of two other stories with a strong father and son that were black and basically survived the whole series, it's just unheard of. So all of these things coming together made this a very powerful episode and a very strong episode for a personal basis as well as from a thematic and a story basis. It's great, and no doubt, you could have put a couple of other people in the role of adult Jake and would have really messed this up. There are some people that you could have made. As grown Jake or as grandpa Jake, and this really would not have gone over well. But I agree, the casting of Tony Todd was well done in this. He's strong. He's very strong, and it was exciting to see. It was emotionally impactful. It was a rich story, and to be able to identify the layers of a story and have those layers play together so well. And that, oh, by the way, it's a science fiction story. it was very, very well done. So, yeah, this is one of the best episodes of DS9 for that reason. So,
well, I agree. It is one of the best episodes. I still have what will probably sound like more wet blanket. Another thing, and again, this isn't really the fault of the show itself or anybody really, other than time. No pun intended. But you see, another thing that hurt me watching this now is that this is a weird thing to say, but I think it would even have benefited if it still had the commercial breaks as originally aired, watching it in real time. I think that would You thought what?
I thought that with Strange New World.
Really? The commercial breaks would have made that?
I wanted commercial breaks.
Oh, I see. Because actually, in the way I'm talking about it, I might have been okay with it in Strange New World as well. But more so with this episode in that, not because I needed a break from the episode, it all happens much too fast. And again, it's not their fault. This is the way things were done, by and large, by everybody, not just Star Trek. And the scope of this story that especially Kat and Carl are so eloquently describing, that scope, I don't like it feeling so rushed the way it does, because it only is 44 minutes or so, and that actually made me feel uncomfortable about the presentation of this grand old story, and I think it actually would have helped with the commercial breaks. But would have been even better, which again is, I know, impossible because I'm saying this in 2016. But obviously, what would have made it better, if I'm retrofitting the show, if the accident could have been presented in an episode of DS9, and then they dealt with the fallout in that episode, and then you had 2 or 3 episodes following it that were full-on episodes.
Wow,
that separate stories that didn't have to do with this, but that took place in that alternate timeline, so to speak, but with their own self-contained stories. And then, like, on the 3rd episode following this one, then you go full on with the Tony Todd and everything, and then boom, reset everything the way... That would have been brilliant. I know, I'm asking too much. I would
have enjoyed that too.
That would have been holy smokes.
Yeah, a little tiny bit more time would have helped, if only because I think one of the very few flaws, and I tend to agree with Kat and Carl on how good it is and why it's good, but one of the flaws is the speed with which our 2 characters at the beginning, the old Jake Sisko and the young woman writer, the speed with which they become intimate with each other is a little quick. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it feels a little bit like she's fangirling him a little too hard,
right?
Mm-hmm. And they're sitting a little too close together, but it had to, I could forgive it. I mean, obviously, it all had to happen really fast, and I understood what they were shooting for. But yeah, like Eric's saying, that if that had developed a little more carefully and slowly, that problem could have gone away.
Yeah.
But sure, the way they packed the rest of it in and made it all work, as Carl was saying, was
yeah. All things considered, that probably wasn't ever going to be a reality. That dream scenario, the fact that they had to do the way they had to do. Oh yeah, brilliant. They did it as best they could. It's just, this is me in retrospect looking back and going, "Aw, shucks!" Like, there was a super opportunity right there, because even though DS9 already gets the credit for introducing story arcs and a little bit of serialization for Star Trek, and they already accomplished that mission already. But if they had been able to pull something like that off, it would be considered even more like a classic epic moment in Star Trek history, if they could have somehow managed that. But hey,
but you know, I think the craftsmanship comes in, because they could do it in 45 minutes. Yes, it did. It felt rushed. I mean, it did. But at the same time, without commercials, I enjoyed the intensity of the ride, where it was just all in your face, all at once, really fast. And I've rarely seen, even on modern TV shows, where they can get in and get out with a complex story like that and not mess it up.
Well, and also especially because new shows, since they don't do it the old way, they don't even try usually.
Yeah, you're right.
To pack it in, so to speak. Because I mean, it's weird now. I mean, not to go on a digression, but like in more modern shows, whether it even be Arrow or Flash, just as an example, like they're almost trying to prolong things because it's weird. It's almost difficult for them now to like fill a 20 episode season. So if they can drag out storylines, it's weird. They've kind of gone that direction instead, and sometimes almost too far because they just drag things out, and then it's not satisfying when they pay them off in newer shows. But whatever.
Right. Well, I think too that if you had a 3-story arc, there was a chance that there could have been a writer's strike. Some writer could have came in and introduced a different vibe to it. There could have been a wacky storyline in between. And I like that this was just unbothered. It's by itself. We don't have to deal with the Jar Jar. I
understand that too, but see,
it was all Liam Neeson.
That could happen for sure, but you do also while you do have the chance of having a dud in an arc, you also have the chance of, if you're sticking with that alternate timeline, that's more room to play around and
that's true.
Do crazy, like Worf could die, or like who knows what.
And Eric, you brought up a really good thing when you said about the Klingon. The alternate Klingon timeline in that, because I kind of just let that roll off my back, and I was just like, well, I paid attention to it, but it wasn't what I was looking at, and until you talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, there was an entire rich timeline there that could have been explored. They could have gone back to that. And
it also reiterates the importance of Benjamin Sisko's contribution to DS9 and what the future of the Federation would be, because we know it's because Ben Sisko's on DS9 that all that stuff works out in the future and Bajor becomes more powerful. All of that, but by removing Benjamin out of the timeline very subtly, they're able to say in just a couple of moments in this episode, the whole future of Bajor is changed. So I mean, again, this
You're
is
right.
layering.
And Kira said it.
Yeah,
Kira said it. She was like, because he was the what do they call
emissary.
it? The prophet,
the emissary.
I'm sorry. He was the emissary, and now that he's gone, they took it as a sign, and they did it there. Da da da. And I was like, all that happened so fast that I really didn't digest that part because I was so wrapped up in the drama and the emotion of what Jake Sisko was going on.
And by the way, I want to
going through rather.
When Sisko disappeared, Deep Space Nine itself died, and that death was actually sad. I mean, watching people leave DS9 was like, oh man, this is sad. This is like a family coming apart. There was a lot of families coming apart feeling in this whole in this whole story. But getting back to something that that Kat said about things not being too dramatic, I think was important. That this was really, really dramatic, but that doesn't mean you have to be melodramatic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can be realistically dramatic and have it be really effective. So
on that note, though, since you brought up, as much as I agree with what's been said on Tony Todd and his performance and when he brought the episode, maybe it was just me, because in stark contrast to me agreeing with Tony Todd and all that, in stark contrast to that, the person who distracted me through the episode with their acting style and choices, weirdly or not, was Avery Brooks.
He was!
Every time he showed up, it's like, who is this guy who's coming from like another show, even though it is his show? But it's his acting style, though.
It was something about his tone. It was just like a little
he was like, he felt like I know he was out of phase and out of time, but he was like this weird omnipresent, like almost like a narrator type figure.
Yeah, well, I think what's really weird, and I think this was the one other flaw I was going to bring up. I just didn't want to make Kat sad. That he didn't. His reaction to being stuck, he didn't seem very concerned about being stuck.
Yeah, I know, as if he'd watched hours and hours of Star Trek before. It seemed to me that's what his reaction was.
Yes, that was a little odd. That was a writing thing.
It's like, But yeah, he was like, "Yeah, it is what it is, man. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Let me see you run." You know,
Yeah,
it's just like,
because he was so weird. Like he almost came off as an apparition himself, like not really Ben Sisko, like but like
now,
an
now we know what was in the haze behind him. You see in the
was it psychotropic mushroom rock people? No.
Life's a cycle, man. See you in 20 years.
Oh, and then the thing I wanted to say too, though, when exploring alternate timelines, this isn't really directed to present company, but I get in these conversations all the time with other Star Trek fans about the ones who hate the Kelvin timeline and are like Prime only when it comes to their Star Trek. I don't think that's any of you guys, but it's other Star Trek fans I know who just they don't care. Like none of the Kelvin, like they don't want to really acknowledge any of it, and I felt like I had my argument against those people, like in this episode, because it's not only in this episode; it's in lots of episodes. But let's just use this one as an example, since this is the one we just watched. Because if you really, with that whole argument against like anti-Kelvin, look, then by that same argument, everything that we experienced in the Tony Todd timeline, that would technically be our Star Trek Prime universe. And that all ended, or at least us following the Prime universe, it all ended when adult Jake solved the situation and zapped his dad back to where he left the timeline. That changing of the original Prime universe that Todd inhabited rewrote things back on DS9, because we should have had this world without Ben Sisko, at least in the Prime universe. But him snapping back set things in a different direction for the rest of the series, which is not very different than what happened with Spock Prime being zapped into the other Kelvin timeline and creating this whole new blah blah blah. But it's a very similar situation there. And I know we just go along because it's better because we have Ben Sisko and we just follow that one and we leave the other one alone. But I'm just saying, when you start getting into Prime this, Prime that, and this is just this episode of Star Trek, you could apply the same argument to a whole bevy of episodes. But I'm just saying, for all those people who get crazy bent out of shape about Kelvin, we left the Prime universe a long time ago.
That's like a whole subtweet, because nobody on this podcast cares about it.
I understand, but I'm just saying, because I get into these entanglements a lot when I'm just tweeting. And
you also have to, okay, look, you have to understand why these people are getting excited about it too. It is highly unlikely that as fans of Star Trek, they have a problem with the concept of alternate timelines. It is far more likely that they just don't like what JJ is doing and are taking issue with this version of the timeline. So, hey, you can pick your side and do whatever you want regarding that.
Yeah, no, but then again, it's not to you guys, but to those people, I say, well, fine, hate JJ all you want, but if it wasn't for him, all you'd be doing right now is reading more Star Trek novels and comics, because you wouldn't have anything else going on if it wasn't for Star Trek 2009. But anyway, that's...
Hey, I thought you were going to add the basement.
No.
Mom's basement.
Okay,
whatever.
No, but... Oh, and the other thing that's a little bit difficult to look at... oh my gosh!
Here we go.
No, but I forget what year it was in the story. It may have been 2389 in the timeline when Nog returns, or when Nog is visiting on Earth, and he's wearing the what for him would have been a throwback Starfleet uniform when he was wearing the red shoulders and the black, like the typical TNG uniform. Anyway, during that segment, to see the actor portraying Nog stand next to Tony Todd, like, did that not jump out at anybody? Because Tony Todd's like 6'7", and the actor playing Nog is like 4'10".
Yeah.
Well, are you just saying it was jarring that they were different heights?
Drastically different heights.
Doesn't matter.
No.
So is Gandalf and freaking Frodo.
Yes, understood. But Nog. I know Ferengi are shorter than humans, but Nog is even shorter than the typical Ferengi, and so it was a bit strange.
No, leave it alone.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
The only thing that I took issue with is I don't know how Ferengis age, and Although we have seen the Grand Nagus on a couple of, and according to that timeline, he must have been 1,000 years old because, Nog was looking pretty young the whole time and all timelines and all ages that we saw him.
I have seen Nog aged up. If it wasn't in this episode, it's certainly in other episodes of DS9. I know I have seen.
Oh dear.
No, I'm just saying they have purposely aged him up in episodes of DS9.
Yeah, so if you want to nitpick, my only detail was he didn't look old enough. But then again, I don't know what the time.
If we're gonna nitpick, how about what is up with the Deep Space Nine fashion?
Well, look, remember, I was thinking about that too. But Kat, as the connoisseur of fashion, you should clearly know.
Oh my God.
At the time that DS9 was filmed, that is the mid-90s.
Yeah.
That is cross colors. So
You don't have to remind me. I remember all very well. I was watching Martin and all that.
Yeah, if you're going to try to project, Fresh Prince and Martin into the future, those
Oh my God, though.
right on. They that
Yeah,
worked.
no, you're right. I've said this before. It's what happened when they went to go to like the fabric store, like the costume makers on Star Trek. They just pick the stuff usually used for couches, but other things. And
It's always that way because if you look at original series Star Trek, their future is hip. It's like literally, as Eric was saying, it's furniture stuff. So half the stuff on like the Romulans was the lining from upholstery and whatnot. You could see
curtains
But so it's always, even though it's the quote future, it is always a backhanded snapshot of the era. So yes, that's cross colors.
Yeah, it's a telltale sign.
And freaking Paisley or something.
I've been thinking about that though, watching modern TV shows lately. Like I was I'm already trying to project myself. Like, how are we going to look at Dark Matter and other shows like 20 years from now? How are we going to look back at them? Like, how are they going to look dated? And I think it's going to be like, well, a lot of it has to be like the eyebrows on the ladies. I think that's a thing that 20 years from now we're going to go, oh my gosh, those brows, they're so 2016.
Maybe.
Because
well, I know the only thing that dates Xena for me was the brown 90s lipstick that they had. Because it was a certain tone.
Yeah. And I was thinking this too, watching like modern westerns right now. It's same thing. You see the ladies from 1880, and then they have these like crazy eyebrows. I mean, they're crazy by 1880 standards. So I'm like thinking 20 years from now or so, when they make Western movies, they're gonna probably go the opposite direction and try to make them look crazy, unkempt or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's just how things like ebb and flow in production. But whatevs.
Wow, we've talked this show to death. This is good. This is a good episode, Eric.
Well, when you've got an episode
it is a good episode. It is a good.
Yeah.
But I have more. I have another thing.
We don't want to hear.
No. This is a little bit different. This is a little bit different from the things I presented so far, because this was the other very nagging sensation I had, and I'm interested to hear how Kat and Carl react to this.
You're wrong.
Yeah, let him go.
Okay, so while watching this, considered classic DS9 episode, one thing that was ringing out in the back of my mind the whole time as I was watching and enjoying it was how similar this story is in many aspects to a certain TNG episode called The Inner Light. And I think The Inner Light is an episode that many people agree that they like as well.
Is that the flute episode of TNG?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And it's an episode that is...
I like this way better than Inner
That's
Light.
fine. That's totally fine. But I'm just saying, it's another well-liked episode that many people like, and Kat has expressed before how much she dislikes the flute episode. And so I just thought it was a little bit weird, because they share so much in common. This episode is very much... It's an Inner Light 2.0-esque type of episode. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of the reasons why I enjoy this episode are the same as why I enjoy The Inner Light.
That episode didn't make me cry. And
that's fair.
The only thing I really like, I remember about the episode is the goddamn flute and me being really annoyed by it. And how, like, to me, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt melodramatic.
I see. So you're a flutist. I see.
However, even with those nitpicks, it's still a good episode. So it's still highly ranked to me. It's just that...
Oh, so you haven't presented it that way before.
What'd you say?
You haven't presented it that way before, the flute episode.
Well, I mean, we'd have to watch it in order for me to, like, tell you really why, because I haven't seen it in, like, a couple of years, so...
Well, and the other thing is, I think I can see a difference between these episodes for Kat in that this episode is about the crew. This episode is about people that we've known and that we've cared about, and we've seen projected futures of them. Inner Light was a vision of alien life, and I really like Inner Light. It's one of the great episodes of Next Gen, but it taking that snapshot in someone else's life is very different than the pain and the excitement that you feel when it's characters that you know and that you care about going into the future. That there's a different emotional impact.
No, and
are you saying because are you? Oh,
yeah.
Carl's absolutely right. I absolutely agree with him. But that said, that's exactly why I said about this episode. Because that stuff that Carl just talked about, that this one deals with the crew and people we know and people we care about, that's the wank aspect of this episode. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. This has
Could
the
you
wank.
Explain for the listeners what wank means?
It's when they intentionally put things in an episode or a story that is kind of like, no pun intended, but to titillate the fans. Like it's akin to fan service, but that has a whole different definition. But it's when you put these things that the fans are gonna. It's like throwing them a bone. It's like, oh yes, we love this. We get to explore this. It's a bit of a fanfic.
I feel like that's what Enterprise wanted to be.
Okay, we're not.
That's a little bit more. That's a complicated.
Let's not go there. But
that's
my counter to that, Eric, is this is an episode about the characters.
I keep telling you though, fan wank is not necessarily a bad term.
But from my understanding of the term, it is an exaggerated fan perspective interjection of things that would be going on. In other words, something that fans have always really, really wanted, and them awkwardly inserting that into the story.
Oh, that is when you use it. Yeah, it can be used in that negative sense for sure.
That's normally what I think. I didn't see the exaggeration.
No, I didn't say it happened. No. I'm saying the term is often used that way, but that's not the way I was using it when I was talking about this episode. Because it's also things that like a fan would respond to, and typically a non-fan wouldn't really pick up on. For instance, again, the ultimate fan wank episode, Trials and Tribulations. But if you show that episode to just a random person and say, hey, this is a really good episode of this Star Trek show, how's it going to resonate with them, Trials and Tribulations, if they're just like, okay, so they're in some weird funky sets, like if they don't have a relationship with Star. So that's why it's high on the fan wank scale, and being a fan pleaser, but not so much with the average viewer per se. And this has a lot of that, which is good. And Inner Light doesn't have that. So there's that's, as Carl pointed out, that is a definite difference for sure. It's just with the Inner Light. Well, no, I don't want to say too much about that. I'll save that for another day.
I will just, gonna add in one of the other things about Inner Light, which is common with this episode, is it's an emotion-driven episode. There's not a lot of lasers, not a lot of explosions. It is a slower story that focuses on an emotional story, and that is unfortunately rare with a lot of good science fiction, and so that's what makes these episodes stand out.
Yeah, and I want to plug the probably out of print Star Trek Alternate Realities box set, which is amazing if you can get your hands on it. It was some good stuff. Came out in 2008.
So you're saying this is a DVD set where they picked out the episodes from all of the series about alternate timelines?
Yes, and this episode, of course, is on there, The Visitor, and it follows right after Inner Light on disc 3. But yeah, that's a good set.
I didn't know they packaged that one. That's interesting.
It's
that's
one of my favorite. It's a good set. I mean, it's a good set of Star Trek episodes. It even has some of my favorite Enterprise episodes in this box. But anyway, yeah. Anything else we want to say before we rate this?
I liked seeing how far Jake was willing to go to set things right and to save his father. I think a lot of times you have characters in shows and no single character gets a lot of time. You don't always get to see how they would act in every situation and where they stand. See, this is hard to explain. I think Jake comes off as very honorable in this episode, that we quickly learn that he's willing to completely destroy his life, and at the end really commit suicide just to get things to work out, just to save his father. I thought that was pretty hardcore. And I thought the way the different actors, both Jake and the actor who played the older Jake, the way they project sadness is really, really intense.
Yeah.
And especially Jake, when you see Jake break down, I think it's around 1850, but you see his father starting to disappear again on him, and you see him break down, and it's just heart-wrenching. But yeah, that's good stuff, and it wasn't melodramatic. It was just
Tom, that's an interesting point when you said that Jake came across as noble. What I thought was really interesting was the development of his character through these ages, because we always thought of Jake as being a noble, sort of an innocent, a poet, in spirit. Mm-hmm. But toward the end of this episode, he actually starts to bend toward the Ahab, because he loses his family, he gives up on his writing, he becomes possessed by this desire,
and he destroys himself.
And he just ends up destroying himself. So, on one hand, yes, it's noble and it's a very generous thing to do, but the traditional innocent poet Jake that we might have expected, what we might have expected of him, is to when his father said, "Let it go, live your life, go on and do great things," that Jake would be like, "Yeah, Dad, I will," and just go on and not do that. So I thought it was an interesting twist of him. I agree in the nobility, but he took you could tell that the pain took a toll on him in a dark, practical, Ahab-like way.
Right. There's a layer of pure tragedy. That grows through the whole show, and that's something that's pretty heavy for Star Trek. I mean, you don't see that.
Right.
But don't you think though? But don't you think though, because he became a doctor, and he's Dr. Jake Sisko, and he knows a lot about physics. So by the time he figures out this rubber band theory about him snapping back, I think he really doesn't care about his life anymore, because he knows he can fix it with this one final act. So to him, maybe it doesn't really matter if he lets his wife go or he lets whatever go, because he can get his entire life back. And what's, maybe a chick that's not really going to stay there, or some other things, when you know that maybe in 30 years you get to literally be back with your father.
Sure, but he didn't really know until the very end that he was going to reset the timeline. He was just trying to get his father back through most of it, and he was still destroying his life and wasting all his years.
Even though his dad told him not to, even though his wife was saying it's a waste. So that's a dark.
But they were wrong.
Well, but he didn't know it at the time. That's what makes.
I think he felt it though, and that's why. That's what drove him. And even if it didn't drive him, it still was something that made him feel better. Maybe. I get what you're saying. But I'm just saying. I don't know. The reason why he had his own personal self-destruction is because he knew he could fix it, and it didn't matter to him.
Well, yes, but that's the dark turn. because there was no guarantee that was going to happen. And at the price of, you say some chick you didn't really care about or knew wasn't going to be by him, that's a big gamble.
It is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's one thing to say it the way Captain, but it's another thing to actually execute that. I mean, go through the 30 years. And even if you know the truth to be the truth or believe it or whatever. Case maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well.
It's just interesting to look at, yeah.
Absolutely. But would we like to rate this episode?
Well, you already know what I'm going to do, so.
Okay. But the audience doesn't know the unit of measure, though, by which you will do it.
So what are we going to choose?
Energy bolts.
No, we're not going to do energy bolts.
Root beer.
No, root beer wasn't in this.
He lost his pen. That's why he stopped writing. We're doing lost.
Oh, we're not going to do subspace inversion?
No, we're going to
How about
unprovoked
Bajoran
choose.
wormholes?
Oh, for crying out loud.
You guys.
How about old Nogs? Old
Nogs.
I give up, Eric.
I'm
Okay,
surprised.
pens.
All right. Missing pens. Missing pens.
Lost pens. Yes.
Lost pens.
pens.
Out of 5.
Out of 5. I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 lost pens.
Oh, all right. I think you gave something 9 out of 5 once, not too long
No,
ago.
it was 6.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it was
That
6.
was Trials and Tribulation.
Okay, so this is 5 out of 5. Gotcha.
Well, I was just countering you guys' ridiculous whatever y'all was doing.
I
that
liked
episode.
it.
But this one, I think everybody was pretty sober on their. It's going to be pretty sober on their rating, so I don't have to go above and beyond.
Okay.
So 5, I'm sticking with it. That's a solid, respectable rating for me.
Was I called out?
Tom. Yes,
Okay,
Tom.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to. I don't want to give it a pure 5 because of the way Cisco acted when he was in the in subspace there. That's the only reason that I don't want to give it a pure 5. But I think it definitely deserves more than a 4. So I'm going with like a 4.7.
Wow.
I'd put it up there.
4.7.
Nice, yeah.
It's weird. Fractions are weird. But I'll go ahead and go.
They're science.
I was going to give it a lower score, actually, than I'm going to actually give it. But after listening to you guys and remembering some stuff, it helped me boost it up. I'm giving it 4 lost pens out of 5.
Wow.
All right.
I'm through with this podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to accept the fact that perhaps there is weed in the temporal mist and let Cisco go. And
wow.
And I'm going to give it a hearty 5. 5 lost pens.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a great one.
Well, being that it's Engineering Hall Day and Tom just went, it would technically be Caitlin's pick. But I guess even people in the Engineering Hall need to spend time in 10 forward sometimes. So.
Woo! Romulan ale.
Pate.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure she drinks Synthanol, not Romulan ale. But she's not with us.
I mean, she's still with us. She's alive.
Yes.
She appears every so often.
Yes. By the way, a throwback to like Kirk and the Tholian web. That's the other thing I was thinking about. I'm just saying.
Dude.
Spock has to get him back. But those damn Tholians are messing with us. But anyway, so yeah, we'll just leave it open. We don't know what's next on the Engineering Hall, and neither do you. So enjoy that, listener. Big surprise for when we reconvene.
Live long and prosper, my friends.
So, closing out the show today. Oh, hold on. Before I close it out, I just want to say it's a weird coincidence that last week's episode and this week's episode, we almost recorded each respectively on their anniversaries of the episodes we were discussing. We almost exactly hit the 15-year anniversary of Strange New World, and we almost exactly hit the 21st anniversary of this episode.
Oh, it's the 21st episode of The Visitor.
21st anniversary, yes.
Anniversary.
Yes, this one originally aired 9 October 1995.
Wow, 21
that's
years.
because we've reached back from the future to remind ourselves that this is a great episode, so we will steer the future.
Nobody saw the second Bill and Ted's movie. Nobody knows what you're talking about. No one knows Bogus Journey. Everyone knows Excellent Adventure. But
and thanks to us, that is why we fixed the timeline and made it so.
So, closing out the show today.
You're welcome, people.
This is Eric.
We've continued our trend of saving you from bad sci-fi. Go, Kat.
I didn't say Bogus Journey was bad, but this is Eric.
This is Kat.
This is Carl.
And this is Tom.
And until next time,
be excellent to each other.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Oh my God.
What was wrong with that?
Bill and Ted.
Oh,
You're
even better, even better.
You're so ridiculous.
I'm
trying to work, and you just...
Good one. Good one.
All right, Tom sounds like he's ready to go.
He's ready to go herd some cats. This even though we did 2 episodes, this isn't even one of our longest sessions as a group. But
well, the first time with that Strange New Worlds felt like an eternity.
I like doing those. I like looking at the ones that are all messed up.
No, I have no problem with it, but we don't have to air out 4 years of grievance.
You're just welcoming the cats into your home, man. Stop it.
But I like it too. But we don't have to air 4 years of grievance into just one episode of a podcast. We have plenty.
It was actually all of that on that episode. It was just that episode.
Well, you guys
we could have brought in the other 4 years.
Well, you guys should have been there when we did the Slug episode. You guys should have been there.
Carl, you were so adorable. He was like, Eric, so explain to me why I don't like Enterprise.
And he didn't. I was hoping he would give me some insight. He Mike Penced it. He just went right off the head. It just did not even answer the question. He just
wow.
Yeah, he Mike Penced it.
Wow.
Because you know why I asked? I wanted everybody to take a break because I'm about to wax poetic.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. You wanted to lean in on this.
I want to lean in.
Yeah, this was definitely the palate cleanser.
Oh my God. Oh man.
What are we gonna do about Eric and Enterprise?
Man, I at least I picked a really good one. I picked a really good episode.
And seriously, I mean that is my final line, because it's clear I'm not a huge fan of Enterprise. But if you're gonna pick Enterprise, at least pick some halfway decent ones. Don't be bringing
But I mean, if you're gonna do Enterprise, there's like maybe
there aren't that many of them.
Awful, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but don't be just throwing mess at us.
Well, he's trying to get the terrible ones out of the way.
No, that's 3/4 of the show. We can't be doing that.
Well, the thing is, I was like, man, I really didn't want to watch that episode, but I did.
I didn't want to watch it alone, so that's why I was making you watch it. I was like, I am not doing this. You're getting in.
What'd I miss?
Yeah, no, we're talking about how much we enjoy Enterprise. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't go do that alone.
No, but I feel them like I feel exactly what you guys described for like this episode.
No, I don't think you do. Because if you do,
I
you
think-
have the
No.
same...
Oh, I'm telling you guys. My question would be, I mean,
I want to hear what Tom had to say.
No, but honestly, no.
I'm through with you.
Just like when you guys asked me, like, how does this work for you? How's this episode okay for you? In my mind, I could ask the same question of you guys when watching certain episodes of those other series. Like, I would think the same thing to myself. Like, how are you guys okay with this? I know I'm okay with this mediocre episode of TNG, but I always wonder how you guys are okay with mediocre episodes of TNG.
But some of that stuff have a nostalgia factor to it. Enterprise has no such thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and I understand that, too. And see, I have more nostalgia for those other older shows as well. But I do have a degree of nostalgia for Enterprise as well.
I don't. Everything from the theme song to everything.
I like the theme song.
I like the theme song.
Excuse me?
When it comes
I like the
on,
theme song.
I like it.
Wait a minute, Carl. Wait a second.
Yep,
Wait
that's
a second.
no, that's one of the only things about Enterprise.
No,
that
I like
you
the theme
like.
song. We've had this
I like
discussion
the theme song.
before.
Oh,
We've
I
had this
just never
discussion.
thought you liked it. I thought it was always an agreed upon one brain that you hated it as much as I. Okay, well,
And let me tell you,
hate the theme song.
here's another unpopular opinion of mine, and that is,
Well, dude, you're full of them.
I
Yeah,
was never happy with the TNG theme song being that song as the theme because
I don't even remember TNG theme song.
That one.
Oh yeah, that's it. I didn't care. It's Star Trekky.
Well, no, it's definitely Star Trekky, but the problem is, even though it is a good piece of music on its own, and Jerry Goldsmith was amazing, obviously, but it wasn't my favorite theme from the movies. I was always a James Horner guy, and so it used to bother me that they went strong with the Goldsmith. But I was like, okay, fine. But it also bothered me that it wasn't original; that they were just reusing that popular theme. Like it's almost note for note, like a redo.
It was
Yeah,
homage.
I don't care.
It was homage.
Yeah, and then even though I liked the DS9 theme and the Voyager theme at the time when they came out, I liked them. For some reason, as years have passed, I don't like them anymore. DS9 and Voyager.
I don't want singing over my Star Trek.
I'm not saying I want singing
No.
either.
I don't want it's been a love. I mean that shit was horrible.
I like it.
It's
I
not
like
weird. It
Now, I don't like-
but the intro video though.
I love
it.
that too.
It
I
was
love that too.
beautiful, but that song ruins it. I can't even watch
But
it
actually,
because of that
though,
song.
I prefer the original Enterprise theme song and not the remix that they introduced
the
later.
The easy
jangle.
listening one was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the remix as much.
Oh, it made it worse. It was just like, oh, you hate this song? Let's try to pep it up a little bit. See what
Yeah,
you
no.
think.
Yeah, I
was
didn't.
Are they all smoking crack?
Yeah, I didn't like
It
that.
was the AM version of it. Crazy.